Welcome to the Discourse Analyzer AI Toolkit, where articles come alive. You're listening to the audio version of our article. For the full text and an interactive experience, check out the link in the description below. Interact with any selection using our AI assistant to enhance your understanding. Let's explore.
Social identity in discourse analysis. Social identity refers to the way individuals and groups define themselves and are defined by others based on social categories, such as nationality, ethnicity, gender, profession, and more. In discourse analysis, social identity is understood as something that is constructed, negotiated, and expressed through language and communication. Discourse plays a crucial role in shaping and reflecting social identities, as it is through discourse that individuals position themselves and others within social structures. 1. Key concepts of social identity in discourse analysis. Identity construction. In discourse analysis, identity is seen as something that is not fixed but is continuously constructed and reconstructed through interaction. Language is a primary tool through which people create, express, and modify their identities. Positioning. Individuals position themselves and others in discourse by using language that reflects their social roles, relationships, and identities. This positioning can be explicit, e.g., I am a teacher, or implicit, e.g., using language typical of a particular social group. Identity work. Identity work refers to the ongoing process through which people manage and negotiate their social identities in discourse. This involves selecting certain linguistic features, adopting specific speech styles, and aligning with particular discourses. Example: in a job interview, a candidate might construct their professional identity by using formal language, emphasizing their qualifications, and aligning themselves with the values of the organization. They might say, as a dedicated project manager, I have consistently delivered on key objectives, positioning themselves as competent and committed. Social categories and group membership. Social identity involves identifying with certain social categories or groups, such as gender, ethnicity, nationality, or profession. Discourse analysis examines how these categories are invoked, reinforced, or challenged in communication. In group and out-group. Language is often used to signal belonging to a particular social group, in-group, or to differentiate from others, out-group. This can involve using specific jargon, accents, or cultural references that signal group membership. Stereotyping and categorization. Discourse can reinforce stereotypes and fixed social categories, which can shape how individuals and groups are perceived and treated. Example: in a conversation among scientists, using technical jargon and referencing shared knowledge about recent research can signal in-group membership and expertise. Conversely, using layperson terms or expressing unfamiliarity with the topic might position someone as an outsider or less knowledgeable. Identity and power relations. Social identity is closely linked to power relations, as certain identities may carry more social power or prestige than others. Discourse analysis explores how language reflects and reinforces these power dynamics. Hegemonic identities. Certain social identities are often privileged or normalized in discourse, leading to the marginalization of others. Hegemonic identities are those that align with dominant social norms and power structures. Resistance and counter-identities. Individuals and groups may use discourse to resist dominant identities and construct alternative or counter-identities that challenge the status quo. Example: in media discourse, certain professions, e.g., doctors, lawyers, are often portrayed with authority and respect, reinforcing their hegemonic status. In contrast, other occupations, e.g., manual laborers, might be depicted with less prestige, reflecting and reinforcing social hierarchies. However, movements like Black Lives Matter use discourse to challenge hegemonic identities related to race and authority, constructing counter-identities that resist systemic racism. Identity performance. Identity performance refers to the idea that social identities are not just reflected in discourse but are actively performed through language. This performance can vary depending on the context and the audience. Code switching. Individuals may switch between different languages, dialects, or speech styles to perform different identities depending on the social context. This practice is common among bilingual or multilingual speakers. Style shifting. People often shift their linguistic style, e.g., from formal to informal language, to align with different social identities in different situations. Example: a person might speak in a formal, authoritative tone when giving a presentation at work but switch to a more relaxed and colloquial style when talking with friends. This shift in language reflects different aspects of their social identity. Professional versus personal. Point 2. Examples of social identity in discourse analysis. Example 1. Gender identity in workplace discourse. In the workplace, gender identity is often constructed and negotiated through language. Discourse analysis might explore how men and women use language differently to assert authority, build rapport, or manage conflicts. Example: studies have shown that women in leadership positions may use more inclusive language, we, instead of I, to build team cohesion, while men might use more assertive language to establish authority. These linguistic choices reflect and construct gendered identities within the workplace context. Example 2. National identity in political discourse. National identity is often constructed through political discourse, where language is used to define what it means to belong to a particular nation. Example: in a political speech, a leader might emphasize national unity by using phrases like, "We are one nation," or "our shared values," constructing a collective national identity. At the same time, they might use language that differentiates the nation from others, e.g., foreign threats, or global competition, reinforcing a sense of in-group versus out-group. Example 3. Ethnic identity in media discourse. Ethnic identity is frequently constructed and represented in media discourse, where language can reinforce or challenge stereotypes. Example: media coverage of ethnic minorities often involves specific linguistic choices that frame these groups in certain ways. For instance, describing an immigrant group as hardworking versus illegal reflects different attitudes and constructs different ethnic identities. Discourse analysis can uncover how these representations shape public perceptions and reinforce social boundaries. Example 4. Professional identity in academic discourse. In academic settings, professional identity is constructed through specialized language and discourse practices that signal expertise and belonging to the academic community. Example: an academic might construct their identity as a scholar by using technical terminology, referencing key theories, and engaging in specific discourse practices like peer review. This professional identity is further reinforced through the publication of articles, participation in conferences, and interactions with colleagues. Conclusion: social identity in discourse analysis is understood as something that is actively constructed and negotiated through language. By examining how language is used to position individuals and groups, signal belonging, reinforce power relations, and perform identities, discourse analysis provides deep insights into the ways social identities are shaped and maintained. Through examples like gender in the workplace, national identity in politics, ethnic identity in media, and professional identity in academia, we see how discourse is a powerful tool in the ongoing process of identity formation and social interaction. Frequently asked questions. What is social identity in the context of discourse analysis? Social identity refers to how individuals and groups define themselves and are defined by others based on social categories like nationality, ethnicity, gender, and profession. In discourse analysis, social identity is seen as something constructed, negotiated, and expressed through language and communication, rather than as a fixed attribute. How is identity constructed through discourse? Identity construction in discourse involves the use of language to create, express, and modify social identities. This process, known as identity work, includes how individuals position themselves and others in conversation, either explicitly, e.g., stating a role, or implicitly, e.g., using language typical of a particular group. What role do social categories and group membership play in discourse analysis? Social categories and group membership are central to social identity and discourse. Language is used to signal belonging to an in-group or to differentiate from an out-group. This involves using specific jargon, accents, or cultural references that indicate group membership, and can also reinforce stereotypes and fixed social categories. How does discourse analysis examine the relationship between identity and power relations? Discourse analysis explores how language reflects and reinforces power dynamics by privileging certain social identities over others. Hegemonic identities align with dominant social norms and power structures, while resistance and counter-identities challenge these norms and propose alternative ways of being. Can you explain the concept of identity performance in discourse? Identity performance refers to the idea that social identities are actively performed through language, often varying depending on context and audience. This can involve code switching, switching between languages or dialects, and style shifting, changing linguistic style, to align with different social identities in different situations. What is an example of gender identity construction in workplace discourse? In the workplace, gender identity might be constructed through different language use. For example, women in leadership roles may use inclusive language to build team cohesion, while men might use more assertive language to establish authority. These linguistic choices reflect and construct gendered identities within the workplace. How is national identity constructed in political discourse? National identity is often constructed in political discourse through language that defines what it means to belong to a nation. For example, political leaders may emphasize national unity using phrases like, "We are one nation," while also differentiating the nation from others with language like, "foreign threats," reinforcing in-group versus out-group dynamics. How does media discourse shape ethnic identity? Media discourse shapes ethnic identity by the way it frames and represents ethnic groups. For instance, describing an immigrant group as hardworking versus illegal reflects different attitudes and constructs different ethnic identities. These representations influence public perceptions and can reinforce or challenge social boundaries. How is professional identity constructed in academic discourse? In academic settings, professional identity is constructed through the use of specialized language and discourse practices that signal expertise and belonging to the academic community. This might include using technical terminology, referencing key theories, and participating in scholarly activities like publishing articles and attending conferences. What is the significance of studying social identity in discourse analysis? Studying social identity in discourse analysis is significant because it reveals how language shapes and maintains social identities, power relations, and group dynamics. By examining how identities are constructed, performed, and negotiated through discourse, analysts gain insights into the ways social structures are reinforced or challenged in everyday communication. Can discourse analysis uncover stereotypes in social identity construction? Yes. Discourse analysis can uncover how stereotypes are reinforced or challenged in social identity construction. By analyzing how language is used to describe certain social groups, discourse analysts can identify patterns that perpetuate stereotypes or, conversely, efforts to counteract them. How do resistance and counter-identities function in discourse? Resistance and counter-identities function as ways for marginalized groups to challenge dominant power structures and create alternative narratives. These counter-discourses offer different perspectives on social identity, seeking to disrupt the status quo and promote social change. Why is social identity considered fluid in discourse analysis? Social identity is considered fluid in discourse analysis because it is not a fixed trait but something that is continuously constructed and negotiated through interaction. As individuals engage in different social contexts and conversations, they may adopt, modify, or challenge various aspects of their identity, reflecting its dynamic nature.